Have you ever felt tired? Have you ever felt annoyed?
Go. Let's go. Hey, let's go.
Have you ever felt angry?
Come on. Come on. Come on.
Have you ever just thought, what if I could just fight someone right now? I am happy to announce that now you can! But it's in video game. In video game. It's almost the same thing. I'm Bruno Barbosa, and I'm gonna go over my personal project and college assignment, which I chose to do procedural animations in Unity for my boxing game. So for the first, I broke my assignment down into 3 milestones. The first one being dodging. This was my first time working with precision animations. So when breaking down my part into milestones, I kinda shot myself in the foot. So the first milestone, yeah, I am doing a procedural dodge animation. For my second, I promised procedural walk, and for my last one, I promised procedural flinching. So like when you get a punch, and you see like their head going back, or they punch the arm flinches a bit backwards, kind of like recoils in some sense. But if you pay close attention, or you know a little bit about procedural animation, or just animation in general, you know that you need to get a procedural walking animation done first in order to get a procedural dodging. Because if you see because when I'm dodging, I have to reposition my feet to the left, to the right, backwards, or forwards, which is essentially a little bit of procedural walking. So, for my first milestone, half was just crouching, and another half was just jumping to milestone 2 ahead of time and trying to crunch it in so I can get a somewhat usable walking animation, procedural animation in Unity. Okay, so let's get into milestone 1. So let's break this a bit further down. So for this, I need a crouch animation, so the player goes up and down, and then I need a procedural walk animation so that when the player moves while dodging, the feed procedurally calculates the next location, so that it feels more like organic and stuff. So what do I need for this? So to make so the first thing I would need to do is get a script so that the player's feet is always glued to the ground, so that when the player dodges, goes down, crouches for the dodge, I can just simply have the player move downwards. Now let's jump into what I've done. So first I started with just doing a little dodge. I just did a simple script, just check if the player has pressed A key, just A key for now, and start a timer for dodging. Basically, so what's going on in the script, which I used for my first iteration of the player foot placement script, is that I'm just casting raycast down, checking for the ground layer, in which if the raycast does touch the ground layer, I just directly set the foot position there. Afterwards, I started working on the dodging, so the player going up and down. And on this case here, I've done this little silly thing in which I was directly setting the player's new position downwards, and which later I would have to change so that the capsule collider of this guy would change alongside as the character went down, which later I changed because putting the whole character down is not the greatest way of going about making the character crouching, making the character crouch. So the best way of going about this would be to set the hip to go lower, which I will talk about it later. This is my script now, and I changed ground placement script. So what I did add is this one here. So what this does, this checks if the player has walked enough to set out a new location. But I have a little bug. So this is the bug. When I walk, the feet kind of still stuck to the ground. So as you can see, I move, but the feet still stay stuck in the ground. So I just thought it was something worthwhile to showcase. Okay, so now I just want to showcase on how the player script now is working. So now I have a multi-tap input. So I have to press the key twice, or how many required times uses, which for me is 2. And then to set off the dodging action. So if we go to the dodge now, I check if the dodging is true. If it's true, then I do dodging, otherwise I just set the collider to default height. But what I'm doing is because now I'm doing so that when the player dodges, the collider in it and the player goes smaller as the player goes down, so that it doesn't clip through the floor to not have any problems. It wasn't a problem before. It's just like for good practice, to make good practice, to make sure that the collider does not clip through the floor. But now, as you can see for the dodge, we're getting really close to the final iteration of it, which is just have the dodge duration timer divided by the dodge duration. This one increases over time. This one is just to set the speed so that when the player dodges, they go above their max speed to get like actually to see like a dash. Um, I set the player position again downwards. I was not using the hip bone still here, and then I do this, and then this is checking the direction. If I dodge to the left, I'm gonna set force to the left. If I dodge to the right, I'm gonna set force to the right. And here's check if the dodge is over, and if the dodge is over, I set the velocity back to its maximum, and and I set the max speed to its default max speed so that the player doesn't pick up a lot of speed, but it's a bit buggy. So as you can see now, I'm gonna dash. It's really strong. It's really strong and it's really easy to break it, but the player does go down after they dodge, which I'm gonna showcase on the screen now. But and if it's still stuck to the ground, but that is a dodge. Okay, so let's do a little recap on how it looks. The dodge animation looks at the end of milestone 1. So first things first is now I'm using the hip bone override transform. This override transform for the hip bone. So let's jump into here down here. So as you can see, now I'm not using the transform player anymore to go up and down. I'm using a hip bone, which is much better. As a precision animation, I should aim to use the bones instead of the player actual transform, pushing the player down and up. Which, if I were to use the player's position, Y position, as I was using earlier, it could cause some issues. As for example, with gravity, I could push the player. Gravity would look a bit funky, and also I would imagine it would push the player down. But by using the hip bone and pushing the hip bone down, there's no rigid body attached to it, so I shouldn't have any problem with gravity with this guy. And also, again, I should be aiming to use bones when using animation, not the whole transform. And I reduce the player collider now. When I dodge the player collider, it reduces by the same size as the player crouches, so that way the rigid body won't clip through the floor, and so that won't have any problems with that, any undesired collisions. This is pretty much what's going on. So as you can see here, if I go to environment to position the rig, spine, I have the spine here for which I'm using to go up and down. And now this is a video of me showing how the animation goes up and down. Learned a few stuff as I changed the methods, and I hope you enjoyed it. But now we're gonna jump into milestone 2.